there are two ways in which you can embed AI or build, leverage AI rather. One way is you already have a piece of software or something and you are embedding and you are bolting AI on top of it. I would call that AI enabled. The other is you are really building from the ground up with AI embedded. AI is the core operating engine of this thing. That's what I call AI native.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Human First AI podcast. I'm Binny, the founder of Hi. Today, we have a very special guest on the podcast, Bratin Saha. Bratin is the CEO of NTT Data AI Vista. Previously, Bratin was the Chief Product and Technology Officer at DigitalOcean. And before that, he led teams that build some legendary products like SageMaker and Bedrock while he was the Vice President and GM for AI and ML at Amazon. Bratin, thank you so much for taking time to do this.
Thank you, Benny, for having me. Really nice to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here for a second time. The first time we did this, it was a very, very popular podcast. So
Thank you.
good to have you back. Hello, everyone.
Let me make it a little bit more concrete. Let's say you have a document editing system, okay?
Mm, mm,
And what you can have, we have many document editing systems. You go in, you type, you say insert table, you insert a table, then you go to Excel. If you have data, you go to say Excel, you create a chart, you put the chart in, so on and so forth. Now,
mhm.
you could bolt on AI in various ways. Like you could say, hey, give me a summary of this dog. So you put a search bar at the top and you can ask questions about the dog. So that's kind of bolting it in, but
Mm,
you're kind of preparing the dog in the old way.
mhm.
An AI native one, you would probably, as you are writing, you are interacting with an AI agent. And so what that means is as you're writing, that agent is probably doing some search on the web for you and saying, hey, I see you are trying to write an industry context on AI. Well, here are some research that is relevant to you, right?
Yeah.
As you're typing something up, that agent may say, hey, it's better if you visualize this in this particular way. Let me just do that for you. Then,
Mhm.
as you're typing other stuff, it says, well, you're making this kind of an assertion, but here is a research report that contradicts what you're saying. So
Yeah.
the point is AI, rather than, I prepare something and then I just bolt on some functionality, like a bolt on a summary functionality or a bolt on a search functionality. AI gets embedded in the way you're producing the artifact, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so you're basically using the AI as a co-worker
Mhm.
throughout the whole work. So that to
Mhm.
me is AI native, where AI is embedded and integrated in your workflow rather
Mhm.
than, it's just a bolt on that I use from time to time.
Very interesting. Okay, that's very well said. Um, and just to kind of double click on that, do you think that is one of the reasons we are seeing the massive stock market sell off on SaaS right now, where the market is telling these SaaS companies, we think, I mean, you want to be AI enabled, but we think AI native is going to displace the AI enabled folks. Is that what's happening?
So, there's the stock market part. And I think,
Yeah.
look, I think here's the thing about what some people may be underestimating, and that
Mm,
is AI is only as good as the data that is
mm,
used to it. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is what I call last mile specialization, which is, you have generic AI tools being built or models or agents being built, okay? But
mhm.
these aren't going to really work well for the customer unless you specialize them to the customer's context and knowledge and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So now there are these two parts. I do think that AI native is a completely different way of working than AI bolted on.
Mhm.
And if I were to give you an example within our company,
Mhm.
we're looking at what could we use as an intranet site, okay?
Mm,
Intranet software, internet
mm,
package intranet site.
Hmm.
And initially, we started with what I would call a software, a software that has been around for some time. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, and then we looked at an AI native software, and we went
Hmm.
to the AI native software,
Hmm.
right? So we just didn't use this. And because the point is the way you work with an AI native thing is very different than the way you work. Like the example I gave, you could say,
Yeah.
hey, I have this authoring doc, and you write, and then you come in and write, and then you invoke AI for some things. Versus the AI is embedded even as you're writing and it's giving you such. It's very different way of working, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
on the one hand, yes, people are going to realize that working in an AI native way is a completely different form of working with the traditional ways of doing stuff, traditional software with AI bolted on. They are two different things. Okay.
Right. Right.
Now, does this mean that all the SaaS companies go away? I think it's premature to say that because of the
Hmm.
other reason I mentioned is
Hmm.
AI is only as good as the data that you feed into it. And
Hmm.
all SaaS companies have so much data about how customers use them, what they do, what are their pain points,
Hmm.
that data is the gold mine. So,
Right.
nothing really preventing these SaaS companies from taking all of this domain slash workflow specific data and
Hmm.
then building the models themselves to integrate AI into the applications. So
Yeah.
I think it's not as simple as, hey, I built an AI native application and now everybody will use it because that
Hmm.
domain last mile specialization is important.
Hmm.
And the SaaS companies also have a distribution channel. They have tens of millions of customers. So if they develop
Yeah.
something that is truly AI native, they can, always sell that as an upgrade. So
Yeah.
there are two key things I'm going to tell you. One
Hmm.
is the way you work in an AI native way is very
Hmm.
different than AI bolted on to the old way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That much is
Yeah.
clear. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, the next point is, can the SaaS companies evolve where they are no longer AI bolted on, but they are AI native? Well,
Yeah.
that depends on an individual company. I think they have assets in terms of the understanding of the domain, in terms of the understanding of the customer knowledge. And
Yeah.
some of these SaaS companies will be able to leverage that knowledge and probably become more AI native. Some will probably not be so. So, I
Yeah.
think broadly categorizing every SaaS company as, they cannot become AI native may be an overreaction.
Makes sense. Okay. And yeah, my next question is slightly a broad question, and the answer is probably fairly nuanced, which is if I'm the CEO of kind of a traditional SaaS company, and uh, I want my product or my company to be AI native, uh, is there a path for my current product to become AI native, or do I just set up something completely new, build something from scratch? It's kind of what Intercom did right now. They didn't mess with their core product, they spun up a whole new product, almost like a new company that was AI native from first. Is that what I should do?
Look, it depends on the kind of company you have. Building with AI from the ground up is easier.
Mm,
Okay.
mm, mm,
Because the constraints are no longer there. If I again had to go back to that example,
mm,
um, the way you maybe even save a file, the way you analyze what is going on. If you go back to that document processing example that I gave, right?
yeah,
Uh, with every keystroke,
right,
you're invoking AI because the AI is analyzing everything you're doing. It's researching the web. It's making suggestions. Everything changes now.
right.
Make, Making those kind of pervasive changes is easier when you build it from the ground up.
Yeah, yeah.
That said, if you have a software tool that has millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions of customers,
Hmm.
you don't want to just drop those customers away. You need
Yeah,
to, if you can find a way of saying, if you can find a way of building AI native capability on the side in a completely AI
mm,
native way and somehow
mm,
drop it into the old tool so that you can
hmm,
leverage the distribution channel you have. That I
Yeah.
think the best one.
Yeah, yeah. That document example you did is a very powerful example, both because it's simple, and also illustrates something. Because I was just thinking now, which is from an AI native perspective, what is a file anymore, right? I mean, traditionally, a file is a bounded, static piece of
Yeah.
something, right?
Yes.
This is a living organism that's evolving. There's no boundary to that thing in a
Yes.
file. What is a file?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It's
by
a
the way, you
Mhm.
can basically, so let's just play this thread a little bit more. So today a file, you have read it, you have saved it, it's static,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Now, within that file, you say, according to research done by XXX, the
yeah,
industry growth in the last quarter was something, right?
yeah,
What
yeah.
prevents you from now saying this is a living document where after every quarter, those data get updated,
Right. So
right?
where is yeah, yeah. Where is
So,
visualization? Where is file? Like all of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then when the data gets updated, the
Hmm.
visualization, the graphs change. And
Hmm.
maybe your conclusion has to change because you said, hey, this is a rapidly growing market, blah, blah, blah. And then,
Yeah.
over the last quarters, then, let's just say it was a temporary surge and now the growth rates have come down. Maybe your conclusion changes as well,
Right.
right?
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
AI can go ahead and analyze all of that data and update that conclusion. So, what is a
Mm.
doc anymore? The old version of a doc was something, the new version of
Yeah.
a doc is I just told an AI, hey, do this research for me, produce a doc. I'll just review it to make sure it makes sense, it hasn't made errors, and that's it. And that becomes a living entity. So it's not even a doc, like you said, it's not even a doc anymore. It's just a interface to an AI agent. And so, can
Correct.
I do
Actually,
this?
yeah. That's what it
Can I?
is. It's a yeah.
Yeah,
It's an interface to the agent. Yeah.
can I now go in and rebuild? Like, is it easier to build it from the scratch? Absolutely. Can I just
Hmm.
go in and take my old word processing and go in and change it? It's going to be much harder to rip
Yeah.
everything else up. And so, rebuilding from the ground up, from scratch is always better. The point
Yeah.
is, ultimately, you also have to run a business. So if you're running a business, you want to reuse your existing customer base, you want to reuse
Yeah.
your existing channels, you want to be able to slide it into the workflow of your existing users. So to me, that's the
Yeah.
challenge, is how do you marry those two?
Right. Right. Yeah. It's fascinating. The other point you made is the SaaS companies have the whole data gravity, which kind of is a moat for them. Uh, so one of the questions I had on that is, as agents are executing a workflow, let's say, for example, there is an AI product manager that is assisting developers, and that is getting stuff from Confluence, it is getting stuff from Jira, SharePoint, and it's working as a layer above all of that stuff. If these agents have access to that data through connectors and APIs and things like that, unless the SaaS companies really block these agents, how is that data actually core and only available to those SaaS companies?
Let's say I'm using a CRM system. I have, in theory, a lot of knowledge about the kind of queries that my users use. And I have a lot of knowledge about what their pain points are, like where they get frustrated, where they have to do a lot of manual work, typing.
Hmm.
I actually know very much how people use it,
Right.
apart from actually having a lot of data. Now, for example, if I'm keeping customer records in a CRM system, that is proprietary data, right? I can't really let somebody else read it, right? Let's say you have a CRM system, right?
Hmm.
And you're putting customer names, customer IDs, and all that.
Hmm.
Somebody can't pull that data in. You can't, because it is your proprietary data. You're required to keep, it's a confidential data. You're required to keep it confidential.
Hmm.
So that software maker has access to that, but no
Hmm.
one else can get access to it. Historical knowledge of, okay, these kinds of customers worked well with these kinds of sales motions, and this kind of customers require this kind of marketing. All of that historical knowledge is there with the SaaS company. The question really becomes, and that is going to allow you to specialize that AI much better to the way your clients use the tools or want to use the tools. And then
Right.
you also have all the historical, your clients told you, here are the features I need, you
Mm.
know. So you have all that historical data, what they wanted to do, what they wished they could do, and all of that. So the
Yeah.
question really is, can you leverage all that?
Yeah.
Uh, and it's not a, it's also an organizational and people question, which is, are you thinking in those terms? Do you have product leaders thinking in those terms? Or would a startup come in, build it from the ground up, something that is so much more delightful that you just go use it?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is what we did. I mean, in our
Mhm.
intranet, we said, okay, it may not have this, that, but the experience is just so much better. Let's just go use it.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's also something that we have noticed in a couple of our engagements, which is the traditional SaaS software, the the interface and the view it exists in is assuming that after a certain sequence of steps, the human has to consume that view and operate on that view. But given that agents do a few more steps on top of that, the kind of view a human needs after that is not the same view that the SaaS provides. It's a different kind of view or a level of abstraction that they need. So I mean, do you think that is going to be the like where the SaaS companies have the data moat, the agent companies provide a different abstracted view to the humans? That's the pull and push. They'll kind of the war will be over.
I think that is where it all comes down to,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Um, i- an instructive thing here is to look at past technology transformation. So if you
mm,
look at, let's say, the mobility transformation, right? If you just took your desktop app and reduce the size of it, it wasn't a mobile native app. Even if you just made it touch sensitive, right? Why?
mhm,
Because in your PC, they were not using your location.
mm,
In the mobility, you have to use the location, right? In the PC
mhm,
at that time, they weren't using your camera. Now you can use your camera. You were able to use a lot of contextual information. So ultimately,
mhm,
you really had to rewrite the apps, or you really had to write mobile native apps which were just not a shrink down. In theory,
mhm,
many people actually started that. They said, well, I have this desktop and a laptop and it's a big screen. All I need to do is shrink it and just make sure people, instead of typing, can touch. No, that
mhm,
wasn't the whole experience. You had to put in your location, your GPS data, take input from the camera, maybe take input from the voice,
mhm.
um, and a bunch of other stuff. So that is what reimagination was. Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think with AI, it is going to change the way the human computer interface is changing with AI. And so the question in my mind is, people who are building from the ground up the AI native, they are going to start with that new human computer interface.
Mhm,
Um, and the SaaS companies, and not the SaaS companies that already have products, have to go from their current interface to the new interface, right?
mm,
Who gets
mm.
there faster and easier?
Yeah, yeah. That was a great discussion on AI native. And just going back to the very first question about entity data, AI Vista, um, the part of the mandate is also to build AI native businesses. And I was curious, is this within the entity group, or are you doing this for any large enterprise out there?
So we are a wholly owned subsidiary of Entity Data.
Mhm, mhm,
The product capabilities we are building
mhm,
are going to be for external clients through Entity Data. So we partner with Entity Data Inc., which is kind
mhm,
of the non-Japan part of the business, and Entity Data Japan, and we
mhm,
embed our AI capabilities into their offerings.
mhm.
Okay. So
Okay.
given the fact that they have such a rich customer base, such a deep client trust, such a deep relationship with client, it's just better and easier for us to say, hey, whatever we develop, let's embed it inside entity data's offerings, both within Japan and internationally, and then
Mhm.
jointly we take it to customers.
Understood. So then at AI Vista, you're actually focused on developing products. What
Product
shape and
capabilities.
shape and form of product capabilities would
We are
that be?
looking at agentic capabilities for more regulated industries. So things like
Hmm.
insurance. So insurance is a first thing that we're working on. Insurance, then banking or
Hmm.
finance and manufacturing. These would be our first three things. And so think of
Hmm.
it as, okay, you have claims underwriting today, you have multinational
Yeah.
insurance today. What does
Hmm.
it mean to reimagine these workflows in an agentic manner?
Hmm.
Okay. And we
Hmm.
have, Entity Data Inc. and Entity Data Japan have a lot of, um, clients in the insurance space, in the banking space, in the manufacturing space. So, working with Entity Data Inc. and Entity Data Japan so that when they deliver stuff to the clients, these AI capabilities are embedded inside them. So, it provides us a really good channel to the market.
Yeah, makes sense. And I noticed that one of your tenets at AI Vista is the whole concept of end-to-end ownership. Uh, how do you think of that? Like, how does that show up in practice?
So if you look at it as entity data from an entity data perspective, if you look
Hmm.
at what is happening today, most enterprises are not getting value from AI. And the
Hmm.
reason they're not getting value from AI is not because of the technology. It's because of the change management and actually integrating this AI into the workflow.
Hmm.
And the other part of it is AI. Think of a new employee, right? Let's say two employees, they've done their MBAs. One of them joins Goldman Sachs, one of them joins JP Morgan. They still need to understand how Goldman Sachs works. What is the conventions? What is the key insights? What are the metrics they use? What are the different lens they use? That is what makes Goldman, and JP Morgan, right? What that
Hmm.
means is that employee, even if they went to the same school, college, university, everything, needs to still get specialized to JP Morgan to be effective and specialized to Goldman Sachs to be effective. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
AI agents similarly have to have that last mile specialization.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think what we are basically saying is if you have to be able to deliver the right solutions to clients, you need to be able to specialize the AI to their context. You need to understand their workflow so that you can embed AI into the workflow. And you need to help them with the change management in terms of the way humans work is changing. This
Hmm.
requires a combination of skills. That last mile specialization requires deep AI skills, AI product skills. The other parts, embedding in the client workflow and the change management, require deep understanding of the client skills, client workflows.
Hmm.
And that, it's hard for any one single company to have that. Like the tech companies don't have that client knowledge and trust and relationship. The consulting clients don't have that deep product expertise. Okay. So
Hmm.
becomes hard for one company to own this entire end to end, right?
Hmm.
Now with
Hmm.
entity data, we can do that. AI Vista can provide these product capabilities. We already have existing relationships with clients. We understand the workflow. We understand the domain knowledge. So, you know, you have to truly get value out of AI. Like I said, your workflow has to change. You can't just go in and retrofit a few things here and there.
Got it.
That is
And
what I mean by the end-to-end thing.
when delivering solutions to like bespoke solutions to enterprises powered by AI products, do you think the way software projects are being costed is that dramatically changing? How does one think of costing a software project anymore with the SDLC collapsing with AI?
I think it will. I think it will.
Mhm. Hmm.
And our goal, that will be one of our key innovations, is not to make it bespoke for every client. Because if you make it bespoke for every client,
Hmm.
then it gets very hard to scale out. And so what we are looking at is how do you bring a platform approach to it so that
Hmm.
you get high degrees of reuse between clients, and
Hmm.
then how do you monetize it, therefore, in different ways? Yes, it will change.
Got it. So almost productizing services uh, layer by layer.
A hybrid. You can think of
Got
it
it.
as a hybrid, which is,
Hmm.
yes, there will be a service engagement to embed AI into your workflow and reimagine the workflows. But then
Hmm.
once that happens, you have a lot of AI running and helping the humans. So, you're also getting product revenue out of that, or
Yeah.
quality
Yeah.
revenue, product like revenue out of that.
So earlier, you spoke about from a user perspective, how an AI native product is very different from a AI enabled product, right? But from a product management principles, what changes fundamentally while building an AI native one versus AI enabled?
I think the thing that really changes is you are now operate the human computer interface is changing, right?
Mm,
Up until now, we have always assumed that um, all the information gathering, all the analysis is being done by human.
mm,
And AI can do all the information gathering, it can do all the analysis and provide you the analysis, right?
mhm,
So, so the way you design a product changes because what was invariably you said, okay, I'm designing this workflow, and this part is where the human has to do this part is where the human has to do this. That is changing very fundamental ways, right?
mhm, mhm,
Um, at this point, you're basically saying, no, the human is not going to do this work anymore. They're probably just going to just validate this work, right?
mhm,
You
mhm,
may you may change from a doer to a validator, or you may change the level of abstraction, you may change from a coder to an architect.
mhm,
And that is a very different kind of product. Okay, if you go back to the document example, if you were product designing it, you will say, okay, the human will type, and then from time to time they need to save. So I should have a save button, and I should have the way to insert charts, this and so on. You would never imagine that this document may be a living thing that constantly keeps getting updated. Why?
mhm,
Because you don't have an autonomous way of working. Now I have an autonomous agent that can 24/7 do the search and give stuff to me. So rather than me coming in and typing, maybe the workflow changes to um, the agent looks at my calendar and sees that a week from now I have a review on something. Or let's say, it looks at my calendar a week back, says, I have this podcast with Binny, right?
mhm, mhm,
And it looks at my calendar and says, here are the topics that, because let's say the meeting invite has, here are the topics or something, right? Okay, it looks at that. Then it goes in, it searches the web. All of this is doable today. It goes in, it searches the web, it creates a summary of the interesting pieces. It
yeah.
says, here are the pieces that are relevant to AI Vista. And then it just creates something for me. That is the notion that somebody can offload a part of the work that I'm doing and I don't have to do that work is a very different product philosophy.
Given that the product manager and the developer's role is kind of, collapsing towards a builder role that you mentioned, right? Do you think the developer armed with product knowledge or the product manager armed with how to build code using LLM knowledge is more powerful for product development going forward?
I think ultimately it boils down to who understands the customer pain points better and the customer needs better,
Mm,
right? Um, it just so happens that traditionally the product managers have been doing the work with the customer and
mhm,
documenting the points and so on and so forth, right? And then
mhm,
the developer has been implementing them. Nothing says that developers couldn't do this. Ultimately, it becomes who is better at understanding the customer pain points,
mhm,
okay,
mhm,
listening to them, and then reimagining how it can be done,
mhm,
right? because once you have done that, as you go forward, a lot of the implementation work can get done by AI.
So while you were at DigitalOcean, you kind of ramped up product velocity by 400%. What was kind of core to achieving that?
I think it was a combination of better processes, some AI, better processes, better um, execution leadership,
Hmm.
better metrics, and some AI. It's a with that level of change, you have to do everything.
Hmm.
It's just not, hey, I just dial in AI. That's not, ultimately, if you have to improve execution, you have to change the processes. So have a roadmap, really
Hmm.
focus roadmap, prioritize things, work on the most important things, go from more of a waterfall execution style to a scrum execution style.
Hmm.
Do you have the right metrics? Are those being tracked? Are those being tracked closely? Are we using AI in places where we can automate the work and become more productive?
Hmm.
Um, and then, do we have the right kind of leaders? Do we have the right kind of people communicating what is important, communicating a new culture? So that was a cultural transformation.
Got it. One of the things that I hear in many conversations with clients is that large non-tech enterprises have a difficult time building world-class internal products, internal software products. Is that something you've encountered as well? And if so, like, why do you think that happens, and how can that be fixed?
Large non-tech companies
Yeah, like automotive, pharmaceutical,
have
manufacturing.
difficulty building good internal software products.
Yes.
Look, if you're not a tech company,
Mm,
building a good software product is going to be difficult, I think,
mm, mm,
right? Because
mm.
look, you need someone who, like, there's a reason for specialization, right? Like, let's say you're a software company, could you build good cars? Maybe, but it's going to be pretty hard, right?
Right.
Or
Right.
could you build good TVs? It's going to be hard. So I think, look, software is a pretty portable skill. Like, you're
Mm,
writing software everywhere, like in a non-tech company, in an auto company and everything else, or in shipping, everything, everywhere you need software. But writing software with a product lens, getting it to the same level of robustness, doing all the corner cases, thinking through how does this software work, not just for me, like, because when you are
mhm,
an internal, your internal customers are the only ones giving you feedback. How does it work, not just for me, but how does it generalize to the world? That
mhm,
is a big architectural leap. Okay.
mhm, mhm,
And then the second is the incentives, which is in an internal non-tech setting, you may be just incentivized and given the runway to build something that just works for your narrow use case, right? Or your
yeah,
narrow
yeah.
need.
Mhm,
You need to have the incentive and the runway to architect it in a way so that it works for everyone. Now, what
mhm,
that means is when you're architecting something to be more general, there is a cost to it. You're adding in layers of abstraction, you're adding in a little bit more code. And what happens is as you scale out to multiple customers, you get it back. So, there's an upfront cost you're paying to make something scalable, well architected, production ready, and all that. And then as tens of, as hundreds and thousands and millions of customers use it, you're not, then it all pays off because your inherent scalability does. So the economics is very different. Like if I had to build a product just for one internal customer, I would build it very differently if I'm looking to optimize cost and time. So I think the fundamental, I think the fundamental incentives, the goals, everything is different.
mhm. Got it. And do you think we underestimate or overestimate the pace of AI adoption in enterprises?
I think AI adoption in enterprises, if you look at all of the data from many, 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 many surveys, all of them say a vast majority, there's 80%, 90%, 95%, 75, some large number of
Yeah.
AI POCs or AI pilots don't give economic value.
Mm.
Okay? And I think it goes back to the things I said. There are a few key things: specialization, having governance built out of the box, thinking through the change management. How does the workflow get reimagined? How does the human computer interface change? How do you manage all of that? How do you make things repeatable? Like if you're doing this bespoke for everyone, it's not
Hmm.
scalable. So I
Hmm.
think it's the harder, I think deployment across, making it pervasive is probably harder than we think it is, but it will ultimately happen because the
Yeah.
benefits are so immense. And also, for this to work, the data hygiene needs to be there and so on and so forth, right? So all
Yeah.
of that adds up to this.
And just a final question, Bratin, given your just deep expertise in product management, right? If we take the product management art form as a workflow, what, and if we had to make that AI native, what do you think would have to change in that workflow for AI adoption to be effective?
First thing is the PM's role is going to change a lot,
Mm.
right? Like I can totally see code will get generated from PRDs, from a product requirements, code will get generated. Like, going from English or natural language to code, we are already there, right?
Mm.
What that
Yeah.
means, going from PRD to code is going to be there, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think that happens. So that is the first thing is, product manager should really be thinking about, I'm not delivering a spec or a requirements.
Hmm.
I'm actually ultimately probably delivering a prototype code, right?
Hmm.
That will
Hmm.
get delivered quickly. So the first thing that you do to become AI native is understand that your role has changed, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, the second thing that I think you have to do is understand that previously you were bound by the amount of research you could do because research, you would be talking to customers, this, that. The bound on that research was your time.
Mm.
Okay, now there is no bound on your research time because an AI
Yeah.
agent can do the work, right?
Hmm.
So previously you would have to do a lot of extrapolations or whatever. You would work with limited knowledge and inputs. Now that is no longer has to. Now you can work with much larger inputs. So the second thing you have to change is how do I go from a world where I was working with limited knowledge to change the way I work to work with, unlimited knowledge that can come to me at any time, right? What was, you talked to 10 customers and then you started
Yeah.
working and then you stopped till the alpha happened. Well, now you can have knowledge coming in every second, right?
Right. Right.
So how
Yeah.
do you have systems that say, okay, I mean, this is not an individual product manager's thing, this is the company's thing. How do you create
Mm.
systems that is pulling in the knowledge and then filtering it and then surfacing the relevant stuff to you and then going in and changing your product specs? So all of
Mm.
that has to change.
That's a great point, which is it's no more static feedback from 10 customers. You have like live signals coming in, right? What do you do
Yeah,
with that live signals? Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you, Bratin. This was super insightful as always. Really appreciate you taking time to do this.
Thank you, Vinny. It's always nice talking to you.